my God, that is Bigfoot.
What this man didn't realize is that he wasn't looking at just one. Look closely at your screen right now. Do not blink. What you are looking at is not a blurry shape on a distant ridge, not a dark mass behind trees half a mile away, not something you need a red circle to find in the frame. This is a face, less than 10 feet from the camera, looking directly back at the man filming it. And somewhere in the shadows behind him, at this exact moment, something else is moving into position. He has no idea. My name is William Carter. I have spent years on this channel reviewing hundreds of submissions, shaky phone clips, trail camera stills, distant silhouettes that could be anything. Most of it is nothing. What you are about to see is not nothing. This is the clearest face-to-face Sasquatch footage I have ever covered. And before this is over, I am going to show you 3 things that will permanently change how you understand what is moving through these forests. The face at 10 feet. The biomechanics that make a costume impossible. And the second movement in the final 4 seconds that most people who watch this footage never even notice. If you have ever walked a forest trail alone, you have already been in this situation. You just did not know it. There are 2 things that separate this footage from everything else in the documented record. The first is the distance, 10 feet. Wildlife researchers call this the death zone, the space where an observation stops being an observation and becomes something else entirely. Most large predators will not allow a human inside 30 feet before they move. Whatever this is, allowed a man to stand inside 10 feet of it and hold a camera steady. The second thing I am not telling you yet. There is a detail in the final seconds of this clip that most people miss completely. Something happening in the background while the camera is focused on the face in front. Stay with me, because that detail changes the entire meaning of what happened in that forest. Now let me tell you who filmed this. His name is Daniel Mercer, 54 years old, former National Park Service ranger with 18 years stationed in Appalachia, the tangled, high-density woodland of the eastern United States. A place where the canopy runs so thick that you can be 10 feet from a 600-pound animal and never know it is there until it decides to let you know. Daniel Mercer knows that forest the way a surgeon knows anatomy. He knows every animal that moves through it, every track, every vocalization, every behavioral signature of every cataloged species in the region. He is not someone who mistakes a bear for something else. He is not someone who has any reason to fabricate anything. He contacted me 11 weeks ago. No subject line, no lengthy explanation, just a video file and 4 sentences. He said he had been sitting on the footage for 3 months, that he had tried every explanation he could think of, that nothing fit, and that he needed someone who would look at it seriously. I watched it once and wrote back within the hour. He was not out there looking for Bigfoot. 18 years of backcountry patrol, off any marked trail, alone. A man who spent nearly 2 decades in that wilderness, who cannot stop going back to it, even though he no longer has to. He had his camera with him because he always has his camera with him. 18 years of professional habit. He was approximately 1.5 miles off the nearest trail when it happened. And what you are about to hear next is the detail that most encounter accounts skip past too quickly. He smelled it before he saw it. Wet fur, musk, something underneath that reminded him of a large predator marking territory, but wrong in a specific way he could not place. In 18 years of field work, certain elements of the smell were familiar. The combination was not. The combination made the hair on the back of his neck stand up before his brain had finished processing what his nose was telling him. He stopped walking, and that is when he noticed the forest had gone silent. Not gradually, all at once. No birds, no insects, no movement in the canopy. Daniel Mercer, with 18 years of experience in that specific wilderness, said he had encountered this quality of silence exactly once before in his career. He described it as the forest, holding its breath. He raised his camera. At approximately 10 feet ahead of him, partially positioned behind a large oak trunk, something was standing in the shadows. Not hiding, not fleeing, not startled, watching him. He pressed record. And what you are about to see next is the part most people completely miss. The footage opens with the camera already moving toward the oak tree. You can hear Daniel's breathing in the audio, controlled. the breathing of someone managing adrenaline through professional training. The first thing that comes into frame is the shoulder, pressed partially against the bark of the tree. Dense, dark brown fur, almost black in the shadow of the canopy. Look at how the fur moves. You can see two completely distinct layers. Long, coarse outer guard hairs matted with forest oils and debris, and underneath them, a dense, dark undercoat structured for thermal regulation. As the slight breeze moves through the brush, these two layers move independently of each other. They do not bunch together the way synthetic fabric bunches. They do not catch the light uniformly the way manufactured fiber does. They flow, the way living fur on a living animal flows. This is where the costume explanation stops working. Synthetic fur reflects light as one surface. Organic fur with two distinct biological layers catches light at different angles simultaneously. What you are seeing in this footage is not one texture. It is at least two, moving at different rates, responding to the breeze at different speeds. That is not something you achieve with a costume, regardless of budget. Now, look at the scale. That oak trunk is a mature Appalachian hardwood, minimum 2 feet across. The shoulder pressed against it is more than half the width of that trunk. Run the geometry. Whatever is standing behind that tree is not human-sized. It is not close to human-sized. The mass visible in just the shoulder and upper arm alone suggests a total body weight of between 600 and 800 pounds, based on the proportional reference of that tree. 600 to 800 pounds. Standing fully upright, on two legs. At the 4-second mark, the creature turns its head. Stop right here, because what comes into frame in this moment is unlike anything in the documented history of this subject. The face comes into partial light as it turns, not the harsh flat light of an infrared camera flash. Natural, diffused afternoon light coming down through the Appalachian canopy. The kind of light that reveals depth and texture and biological structure that no trail camera image captures. Look at the brow ridge. In human anatomy, the brow is a subtle curve. In documented great apes, it is a heavy, bony shelf. What you are seeing here sits beyond both of those reference points. Massive, weathered, jutting forward above the eye sockets in a pronounced overhang that throws the eyes themselves into partial shadow below it. This is not aesthetic. This is structural engineering. At this point, he still thinks he's alone. Now, look at the neck, or look at where the neck should be. The head sits directly on the trapezius muscles, almost no visible neck between them. In a human wearing a large costume head, the proportions fail in a specific and consistent way. The head looks disproportionately large. It shifts and bobs independently of the body movement below it. The center of gravity sits too high. Here, the mass is distributed exactly where biology places it in a creature built this way. Upper torso dominant, shoulder structure carrying the weight load, head sitting on the body as an integrated part of the same structure, rather than mounted on top of it. This is not a costume-fitting problem. This is anatomy. And what you are about to see next is the part most people watching this footage completely miss on first viewing. At the 7-second mark, as the light catches the eyes at a specific angle, you see something that cannot be manufactured in a field setting with any mask or lens ever produced. The tapetum lucidum, the reflective biological layer behind the retina that allows nocturnal predators to function in near total darkness. It is what causes eye shine in trail camera images. What makes a predator's eyes glow when light hits them at the correct angle. Humans do not have this structure. Glass eyes in a mask do not have it. Reflective paint cannot replicate it, because the tapetum lucidum reflects directionally only when ambient light hits the retinal layer at the precise biological angle. What you are seeing in this footage at the 7-second mark is a living eye, responding to light, the way only a living eye responds to light. That is an organism, not a prop. Now look at the eyes themselves, and look at what they are doing. They are not darting around looking for an exit. They are not wide with the panic response of a surprised animal. They are locked on the lens, on Daniel, with a stillness and focus that Daniel Mercer, who has stood within close range of bears and mountain lions in the field, described to me as unlike any animal he has ever faced. He said it did not look at him the way an animal looks at a threat. He said it looked at him the way something looks at you when it is making a decision. At the 12-second mark, the creature shifts its weight. Watch the firing sequence carefully. First, the shoulder blades rotate, then the skin moves, then the fur follows the movement of the flesh with a fractional delay. That sequence is subdermal tension. You are watching muscle groups firing under a layer of skin and fat and fur in the exact biological sequence that large primate musculature fires. Costume fabric moves from the outside in. It shifts as one piece. What you are seeing here moves from the inside out, muscle to skin to fur, in biological order, with the natural latency of real tissue responding to skeletal movement beneath it. To replicate the firing sequence and center of gravity compensation you are seeing in this footage artificially would require animatronic engineering that does not exist outside of major film studio budgets. Daniel Mercer filmed this on a handheld camera in a hollow in the Appalachian woods on a Tuesday afternoon. If you have ever walked a forest trail alone at dusk and felt that specific weight of being watched before you heard anything, you are not imagining things. You are responding to the same biological signals Daniel Mercer's body was responding to in that hollow. The difference is, Daniel had a camera running. At the 19-second mark, Daniel takes a half step backward. The creature does not move. It tracks him with its eyes, holds its position completely, no flinch, no shift toward escape, no preparation to flee. It simply watches him step backward and stays exactly where it is. Daniel told me this is the moment his professional training and his survival instinct began pulling in opposite directions. 18 years of field documentation told him to hold position and keep the camera running. Something older and more fundamental told him that 10 feet was already too close, and getting closer to nothing. He kept recording. At the 28-second mark, the creature makes a sound, not a roar. Not the screaming vocalization most encounter accounts describe. Something lower and quieter than that. Daniel described it as almost conversational in its register. A sound made to acknowledge presence, rather than establish dominance. The audio captures it. Low. Resonant. With a chest depth behind it that Daniel said he felt physically in his sternum before his ears processed it. Infrasound. Low-frequency vibration generated by large biological systems operating at the threshold of human hearing. Documented in large predators, including tigers, as a physiological mechanism that produces involuntary responses in the nervous systems of prey animals. Disorientation. A sudden physical sense that something is deeply wrong. A survival alarm that bypasses rational thought entirely and goes directly to the part of the brain that makes decisions faster than consciousness can. Daniel said the moment that sound hit him, his body made a decision that his mind was still catching up with. He took 3 steps backward. The creature watched him take all 3. Then, at the 36-second mark, it turned, slowly, with no urgency at all, and moved back into the brush behind the oak tree, unhurried. Deliberate, disappearing on its own terms. By the 43rd second, the forest is empty. Same hollow, same canopy, same silence. Like nothing was ever there. Now here is what I told you I would show you at the beginning. The detail most people watching this footage never see. Go back to the 38-second mark. The moment just before the creature turns to leave. When Daniel takes his 3rd step backward and the camera shifts fractionally to follow his movement. Look at the left side of the frame. Behind the primary oak trunk, in the deeper shadow, at the far left edge of the camera range, there is a second movement. Not the creature in front of him. Something else. Moving through the brush at the far left edge of the frame, in the same direction, the primary creature will move. 4 seconds later. While Daniel had his camera locked on the face at 10 feet in front of him, while every trained instinct he had was focused on the immediate threat, something else was moving through the tree line to his left the entire time. The creature he was documenting was visible to him, on purpose, which means whatever was moving in the shadows on his left had the tree line between itself and Daniel's line of sight from the moment this encounter began. Daniel did not see this when it was happening. He found out watching the footage, alone at home, 3 months later. He told me that seeing that left side of the frame for the first time was worse than the original encounter, because it meant the entire time he thought he understood the situation, the entire time he was managing his response and holding the camera steady and making professional decisions about distance and documentation, he was only watching half of what was happening. and the half he was not watching was the half that mattered. Researchers who have studied encounter patterns across Appalachia and the Pacific Northwest document a consistent behavioral signature in multi-individual sightings. One visible individual, at least one more maintaining position in the surrounding tree line, beyond the witness's primary focus. The visible individual holds attention. The second uses the cover of that attention to maneuver. This is not random animal behavior. This is coordinated spatial awareness. This is a tactical response to human presence that involves at least two individuals operating with knowledge of each other's position and movement in real time. That level of coordination does not exist in the behavioral repertoire of any currently cataloged North American species. Now here is the historical context that most people doing Bigfoot content skip over entirely, because it matters more than any single piece of footage. The Cherokee people of the Southern Appalachians maintained detailed oral traditions about large bipedal beings in the deep forest for generations beyond any written record. The Shawnee, the Lenape, the Haudenosaunee nations of the eastern woodlands. Every indigenous nation with deep roots in the Appalachian forest carried some version of the same knowledge. A large bipedal being, covered in dark hair, enormously strong, aware of human presence, capable of moving through dense forest without being seen until it chose otherwise. Every single one of those behavioral characteristics is visible in this 43-second clip. The folklore of the people who lived in that forest for thousands of years did not predict this footage. But this footage fits that knowledge so precisely that the only intellectually honest response is to stop calling it folklore. Here is what I want to say directly about Daniel Mercer. 18-year career record with the federal government. No financial stake in any of this. No channel, no platform, no reason to fabricate anything. He came forward because 3 months of watching that footage alone convinced him that silence was the wrong choice. To Daniel, thank you for sending the email. The footage deserves to be seen, even if it changes the way people who knew you professionally see you from here forward. The fact that you understood that cost before you hit send, and sent it anyway, says more than 18 years of field reports. And to everyone watching, if you have been in those woods, if you have stood in that silence, if you have felt something your training or your logic could not account for, and told yourself it was nothing, leave something in the comments before you go. Type flanked if you saw the second movement at the 38-second mark on the left side of the frame. Type biology if you believe what Daniel filmed is a living, undocumented primate. Type watched if you have stood in a forest alone and felt something you have never told anyone about. Because next week, I am releasing what Daniel found when he went back, 14 days after the encounter. Not alone this time. 2 colleagues he trusted. Equipment that documented what was on the ground in that hollow, in detail that changes the meaning of this footage entirely. What they found tells us this creature was not passing through. That hollow is a location it returns to, which means every time Daniel Mercer hiked through that section of Appalachian forest in the years before this encounter, that creature may have already known he was there, and so might the one that was moving through the shadows on his left. If something is moving through these forests right now, coordinating with others in the surrounding tree line, choosing when to be seen and when to disappear, deciding how close to let you get before it makes its next move, then the question is not whether it exists. The question is how long it has been watching, how many times it has stood inside that 10-foot distance while you kept walking, and what it has decided about what it sees. Next week, you will see what they found on the ground in that hollow. I have been sitting on it for 2 weeks, and I promise you, you are not ready for it. And if you think this is rare, you're wrong. Every week, in forests across this country, people are stepping off marked trails and into something they do not have words for. Most of them never say anything, because they know what happens when they do. Daniel said something, and now you know what was standing 10 feet in front of him. The real question is what was standing 10 feet behind you.